Okay, so just finished up doing quite a bit. Oh, my camera's lagging. Quite a bit of welding on the seams and edges of the pieces for the pipe here. Here's a couple of sections I'm not going to touch because they're still very warm. Let's zoom in there. Not my best welds on little thin shit like this, but went pretty good. Dad, grab those bottom ones that you have down there. And yeah, hold them up. So that's basically what you got right there, is one section of the pipes and stuff, the sections that we've done. So I have the edges basically welded on all of them except for this one last little sliver of a piece here where the stinger tube is actually going to go, and I have to finish doing that still. But there's all of our pieces. It should be like 50 something total. You know, we had rolled everything here on the little roll bender. What I did to actually weld them is I actually came and slid them back in the roll bender and had the edges where they kind of came up to a point here. I could basically grab each side with one hand and then kind of come in here from the side and tack it to hold it together, and I'd come back by and run a small bead across the top, and that's basically how I got all these together here. So this is pretty much all the sections except for, again, this one last little tiny piece there that I have to do. We had a small mechanical malfunction over here on the welder. If you can see that, that's where one of the coolant lines off the water cooler has pissed out some fluid, so I had to work on that. I put fluid back in it. Don't know why it's leaking, but anyway, so we've just about got that done. Basically the next step from here is I have to make a small adjustment over here on our exhaust flange that we made before. You can see it there. Basically what has happened is it's very close to the inside of the frame in here, so we're going to have to actually angle it where it's on this flat plate, kind of back this direction towards the camera, and then make all the pieces loop around. So that's kind of the update on where we're at with everything. What do you think of this mess? Did you ever think we were going to actually see it put together? Don't know. Yeah, it's a lot closer than it was, so alright. So I want to give a quick update on the Rotax 250R build. Here's my exhaust pipe and some of the final stages. This last section down here is getting really hairy, fitting out on the bike in between the frame and the shock and all of that. But there's the pipe so far. Probably seen some pictures of it on the bike at this point. I will get some video of it kind of mounted on there later on. We've got a pretty neat little mounting setup here. I took some 1/8 inch pieces of welding rod, bent over, and welded those down. And then I actually have a pretty interesting method of hanging it on the bike over here. I actually took some old chain links. You can see them there. Let's focus in. And basically drilled holes to them bigger to fit 6mm threaded bolts for the flange. So those just go through there, and then the spring will basically just, you know, hook on right there. It's got a nice little flange to catch it on. I've got that on each side. As I've been in the process of building this pipe, it is really tight fitting through here. It's you can't even really understand it in picture without looking at it in person. But this coolant line here I'm going to have to get really creative with. I'm going to probably have to actually almost run a 90-degree straight up over around the head and then back down somewhere into here to make it fit, because there's no humanly way possible to loop it the normal way because the pipe is right in this area. And then also consequently, because the pipe is so big, you see the Kickstarter there, it basically consumes this whole area. In fact, on this very corner right in here on the pipe, I'm going to have to do some clearancing to make the Kickstarter to fit. Right now I'm working in a really interesting and tedious area right back in here, basically trying to fit the pipe as it's tapering down to its final diameter between here, this part of the frame, back here where the shock is, and where the carburetor is going to hang. So it's really interesting trying to fit all that. I have this many pieces here left As you can see, this is not yet a very small diameter to be trying to fit in this general vicinity. You can tell that that's a really interesting squeeze, but I am working on it, and we'll see how it goes. After this pipe is done, I'm going to have to reroute this coolant line like I talked about, and then I'll actually finally get to start buying some new bearings and stuff for the inside of the cases. I have a little bit of finish work to do up on the top of the cylinder and the head for the mating surfaces there. Other than that, it will be hopefully downhill from there, but Christ, there is a lot of stuff to fit on this thing in a very confined spot. The power valve unit goes right here in between the radiators, about where the CDI box would normally mount, so I'm going to have to get creative with that too. It's just by the time you get the pipe, the coolant hoses, the carburetor, the Kickstarter, all of this stuff in a very, very tight area, it is going to be a real challenge, but I'm confident I can make it fit. I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of denting in on the pipe in this area back in here, unfortunately, just to make it squeeze through, but I'm this far along on it, I'm not going to stop and try and do something else. So, if I have to dent it in 3/16 of an inch or something there, out of the whole scheme of the pipe, I'm going to, call that a success compared to some factory ones I've seen that have the entire flat side here with the air scoop and stuff flattened off so it doesn't stick out and things like that. So, shouldn't be bad, but that's the progress update on the Rotax 250R build. Alright, so I want to do a little video here basically on some tools of the trade to make the pipe so far, and basically just about got it done. So I started off using regular 1/16 TIG welding rods, and it was just too big and thick. So I ended up going to Lowe's and getting this roll of MIG wire. I think it's 35 thousandths, whatever the hell size it is. 30, there it says it. That helped a lot. I will tell you that if you have any gaps, it doesn't work very good on filling, but whenever you've got an actual nice joint, the bead lays a lot flatter. It doesn't pile up like whenever you're using the 16th rod. You wouldn't think it would make that much of a difference, but it really does. So I've had that. I've had a little tiny gasket hammer to form some edges and stuff with. Channel locks, basically sometimes whenever the pieces are kind of malformed, you can grab the edge of one of the sections with this and kind of bend it back over so it lines up with the next piece. It doesn't keep them exactly round, but you got to do what you got to do to make joints and stuff up. I have a bunch of these little clamps. Most of the ones I ended up using were these little ones here to basically get the edges of sections together and then kind of hold them. I've also got a magnet here, very strong magnet actually. That helped quite a bit in a few areas. That makes the arc go really, really funky though, so you gotta kind of watch out and just basically as soon as you get it stuck together, stop, pull it off, and then go back to what you were doing. Just regular pair of vice grips again to kind of hold sections and hold things in place once you get it lined up. Black magic marker over here was invaluable. You can see to line up the sections and make line up marks on things. Had to have that, or you could use a scribe tool or something, but that was plenty good to do for what I was doing. Slip roll, of course, to roll the sections up. I will tell you that this little machine took a little bit of a learning curve for me to get the hang of. I had never really used one much before. What would basically happen is when I would put my sheets in and roll them, of course, there's threaded rods back here to adjust your distances on your rolls from one to another so you have the kind of angled effect. But anyways, what would happen is as I would roll a piece, it would basically just travel down path of least resistance and it wouldn't really roll right. So what I ended up figuring out was if you just started down at the edge right up against this, you could use that as a guide and you could actually make the piece slip in the roll as you're rolling it around this way, and that gives your conical taper you're kind of going for to get your pieces. Even if they're cut, you know, where you have a short side and a long side for your flat template, when you put this piece in there, it doesn't want to roll in the shape that you want. You have to get it up against an edge and force it against that, and then as you're rolling it through, then it actually starts to make the curve and the shape that you want. So that took a little while to get that figured out. The next thing was I went to Harbor Freight and got this belt sander on sale with a coupon code. I think it was like $120, which it's a pretty nice belt sander for what I paid for it. I mean, it's just a Chi-Com thing like everything else from Harbor Freight, but it's got a decent sized disc here. The belt area, basically, once you have your sections rolled on the slip roll and you have your edges brought back together and you weld across that seam like I showed in the previous video, you'll bring them over here and drop them down onto here and hold them, and what that does is that flattens it off. So let's say this sign I had here, it could have been, see the difference in the seam there, even though you would try very hard in your welding to make sure that it's totally flat, just because things warp and change in shape, you would have one side of the seam that was higher or lower than the other. And so whenever you go to fit up to the next piece, it's not flat, so you have a gap on this side here. So what you do by putting it on the belt sander is basically take off your high side here and go back till it's a flat surface, and then your next piece actually mounts right up against it. Now, on my pipe, I did not account for the distance and material that would be cut off of each section, which was a fail on my part. So basically, the next time that I make one, each one of the sections I need to account for and have, maybe, I don't know, 80 thousandths taller and longer each, and I was expecting that way. That gives me adequate length to actually grind off of each end to make sure I get it flat, because what happened is a couple of pieces, by the time I got them ground back flat on the ends, it was up to a larger diameter because I had went further up on the taper. So then I had a bitch of a time to get them to fit back that direction too. I was basically making it better in one way and then worse in another. So that didn't really work out, and I know now that I have to account for that material removal in each section whenever I'm making my calculations. Other than that, I also use this rocket nose cone over here that I dug up in a ditch about 10 years ago, driving by and found and thought, hey, that looks like a pretty neat piece of material, and it actually worked pretty good to lay some of the cones over and kind of hammer form around the sides of it to make sure the ends were round and stuff, and done pretty good for that. So other than that, I use this 2x2 here and beat around on things to form quite a bit also. TIG welder, I mean, that's pretty much it. Just a lot of time and finagling. Best thing I can offer is to just do it, and you can't really overthink things too much, or my God, it'll take you forever and you'll never get anything done. You got to just kind of do shit and get it over with. So here's another update on the Rotax 250R. We've just gotten the final pieces put on the end of the pipe down here, the final sections. I've got it pretty much hung on here. Dad's going to pull a silencer over, something roughly like that. I still have to make a piece of stinger tubing to go on from here and connect over to the muffler and do a slip joint. That is a like first generation FMF 250R silencer, but I'm going to have to run a larger diameter tubing. Here, this is only 1.1 inch. It'll actually be like 1.25 inch size because it's a larger CC engine. And this is a real small outlet diameter right now. In fact, it'll probably get cut back a little bit wherever I end up hooking on the 1.25 inch to do that. But basically, that is every single one of my sections now put onto the pipe. Bending all the way back around there up into the exhaust port. As you can see, I've got one spring kind of presently just hanging the thing on there. This last section back here at the back, the last video, I was working right in that area, and if you can get up in here, you can see how tight of a area and stuff this is, where I had to loop around the frame up there where the shock mount is. In fact, you can see I have the shock actually sitting offset a little bit instead of centered. I'm going to have to get a little creative with shock mounting, or maybe doing a little clearancing where it backs up to the pipe right there. And also get over here where the intake is. So obviously right here we're like almost about a finger's width away from the pipe here where this boot is. Luckily the carburetor won't actually sit in this spot, it's going to sit further up, and the pipe is actually further away back here than it is right here where it makes this bend around. So I just had this long piece of rubber stuck on there to have an idea, but still going to be really, really close to the carburetor, but should have some clearance. Again, you can just see how tight a fit that was, snaking everything through there. I did have to make some clearances right here and back up here, I believe it was, on the Kickstarter gear housing. But it is hooked on there. I've got some more spring hangers I made down here for springs I don't have hooked on at the moment, but it is all together on there, and man, it has taken a shitload of work to get to this point on it. And you'll see, I mean, it's so close to everything everywhere. I mean, the Kickstarter is right so bleeding edge close, and I mean, I don't have any kind of final mounts made up, so I might have to run a little bit of a clearance in here for that. But as it sits right now, it does clear. So that's one benefit. But real close up here to the gas tank. It's sitting a little bit low right now because I don't have it totally lined up. Something probably about that is the actual clearance, which as you can tell is still not much at all. Especially back here in this area. It's just about sitting on it now down at the regular length. So what I'm going to have to do is probably glue some kind of a heat resistant fiberglass or some kind of reflective tape or something to the bottom of the tank, just to be on the safe side. But there it is. It's absolutely massive. I can't explain enough on video how big this thing actually is until you see it in person. I mean, it's absolutely gargantuan size. That's a good angle there, I guess, to show how big it actually is. It sticks out everywhere.
Monster.
Yeah, the old man says it's a monster, and it is. It's huge. So basically what I have left to do is the silencer, stinger tubes, and slip joints. I'm not sure what I'm going to use for a silencer yet, if I'm going to use that one and kind of recycle it, or I'm going to go a different route. I'm just glad to have this much out of the way at least. The shock mount, like some of those other areas I was pointing back earlier, I'm going to have to do a little bit of clearancing and stuff on, but you know, this is the big hardest part basically done. Once I get the stinger tube and silencer slip joints mocked up, I will end up making some mounts for the pipe, and then after the mounts are done, then I will, well actually, after the slip joints are done, I will come back and weld all the joints and then do the mounts. I don't want to do the mounts first because I'm concerned that after I weld everything up, there would be enough distortion that my mounts wouldn't line up. So, stinger tube and slip joint for the silencer, weld every seam, and then I'll do the mounts. As far as actually mounting this thing, like we were looking a minute ago up here, there's just basically no room over to the head or anything like that to go mounts that way. I'm probably going to do something down here in this general area, which is pretty common on bigger pipes like this. And I was also entertaining the idea of doing something off the back of the side case here, some kind of a mount, and then right in this general area or something like that, maybe off the top bolt of the shock down if necessary, because there's just no room to go under the tank on up like normal. So that's where it's at till another update video. But it's getting there on this thing. I tell you, this pipe has been one hell of a project and undertaking to get to this point. So It's got a couple areas I'm not super happy with, especially back here on this little last leg. Joint wise, I could have been a little bit, better on, but I kind of had to deform things and squeeze and flatten out to make it fit even in there like it is. So all things considered, I give the thing like a B+. I, could have maybe done a little bit better, but shit, for first attempt, I'm pretty happy at what it came out with. I just wish I wouldn't have had so many hours wrapped up into it, basically. So anyways, that's it. Till next video.